How you doing, guys? I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know there's still people coming through the hallways. They started us at 1:30 today instead of 2, so I know a lot of people are still eating. But I'll go ahead and get started so we're on time. My name's Jim Zimmerman. I'm a CTO, lead developer of Thuzy.com and TeamZoneSports.com. It's a sister company of ours. I'm a ASP.NET MVP, and there's my Twitter handle, Jim Zim. How many people use Facebook? Okay, I figured at least that much. How many people write apps in Facebook? Okay, how many people want to learn to write apps in Facebook? Okay, well that's good. You're in the right place then. We've done a lot of Facebook app development in Thuzy, and when we first started, we had to figure out how we were going to scale these apps. And so we looked at a lot of different platforms, and we chose Azure for the ease of app development and to look like a lot of fun to learn. So I'm going to kind of go through how we did that, and we have a toolkit that we've released that you can download and everything. So I'm going to get through that here today. And I'd like this to be somewhat interactive too, so if you do have questions, please ask as we go along. Okay, so let me tell you who we are real quick so that you know where we come from. We're a startup. We develop social media strategies for companies like Outback, Under Armour, Toyota, quite a few companies that we're working with right now. And we implement viral marketing solutions for them. I'm going to go through some of the apps and how we did it. We also just got preferred developer consultant through Facebook, which is good. So we're on one of the 50 companies that they prefer you to do development business with. And we just became a Microsoft partner, and we're doing some work with Microsoft too with Facebook. So we collect a lot of unique data, consumer insights like how many people allowed the app, how many people filled out the form, how many people invited friends. Of those people that invited friends, how many people came back. These kind of analytics are really good for companies because they want to see, who their top guy is or girl is in Facebook. Who's talking about them the most, that kind of thing. And, we map social media to overall businesses, their plans, and, we provide an ROI for their investment. Is there any companies here that have fan pages? Okay. Oh, okay, good. So you're probably well aware that it's free to communicate on your wall for your business. So, you can go ahead and status an update, and everybody who's, following you on that fan page will see what you want to message to them. And, we provide scalability leveraging Windows Azure. So that's what we specialize in.
You are to be at Facebook headquarters.
Facebook is so cool, man. I'm going to post it to my wall. So,
good program.
I don't know if you recognize that guy. That's me. We were at Facebook headquarters last July, and so we went out there with Outback and Under Armour, and we were trying to figure out their social media strategy, and they were nice enough to host us there. And that video was taken from my boss, and he wanted me to post that on my wall, so I went ahead and did that. That was a pretty fun time out there, and those guys are a lot of fun in Palo Alto there. So when Outback came to us and Under Armour and some other companies, we had to figure out what the viral application needs were, because we were just as new to this as they were. Even Facebook themselves are still trying to figure out the best way to scale things. And they obviously have a good strategy in place. But if you've ever been on Facebook, sometimes you notice things don't work correctly, or maybe it's your internet, maybe it's their servers. We all kind of have this scale problem when you have hundreds of millions of users. So we had to figure out how we were going to support thousands of users overnight. The success of one of our clients could not be the failure of others. So we didn't want to do the multi-tenant thing. While we had a data center for TeamZone Sports and a few other sites that we do, we didn't want to put an app on there and then have the server have extra load, and then it hurts the other sites. So Azure was kind of a perfect fit for that, and we needed a way to dynamically scale the virtuals as we saw the traffic go up, we needed to be able to increase instances and decrease them also as we had less traffic, so we're only paying for what we use. So we decided we didn't want to purchase more hardware, and so that's why we went with Azure. So did anybody actually use this app? It was back in November. Did anybody get a free Bloomin' Onion? No? A couple people. Anyway, when we launched this in November, November 1st, I think it was. It was right before PDC, like 2 weeks. So we were running on CTP of Azure, and so it was kind of a gamble, but I was pretty confident with it. I'd been using it for a couple months, and I didn't see any real problems with it at all. And the fact that I could scale was actually better than the other alternative, which I was scared of, is doing it on our own servers. So it worked out pretty good. This is what happened. So I guess it was November 5th when we went live. We started off with 27,000 fans, and by the time we were at PDC, it was at 350. So in less than 2 weeks, we did about 350,000 new fans. And then, a couple days later, actually, that launched up to about 500,000. And our plan was that was going to happen in a month, and it happened in 2 weeks. I guess people like their onions, so they were posting it to their wall, and it was really interesting to see how it viraled. They were inviting their friends, and they were posting it to their wall, and then at some days you would see 4 of your friends got an onion, so you'd see onion, onion, onion. It was pretty cool to see. So this is kind of what happened. We ended up getting 486,000 fans, 200,000 in 1 week. So we were the top two in the top 2 gainers for that week. I like to show this because it's an interesting stat, and it's a third-party verified, where you can see that Outback was up there with Mafia Wars, which is kind of funny to think about. So Outback came to us and they said, well, we want to repurpose that Facebook app that you wrote for us. And so what we ended up doing was, and you guys may have seen the commercials over the last month, they're trying to raise, I think, $1 million for Operation Homefront off their red, white, and blue menu. So they wanted to go ahead and repurpose the same Facebook app, change all the graphics, and they wanted to use the same one because they already had something like 600,000 users that they could already tap into to see this video and to kind of use it as a marketing thing. So we went ahead and repurposed the same application, and I'm gonna take you through that right now so you can see a live app in the cloud as it is now. So on Facebook.com/Outback, they're asking these heroes to post their stories of their heroes. So that's kind of the My Hero Story thing here. And the support troops, it's here, and you can click here to say thank you. Now, what happens here is you go to here, and you end up
For 20 years,
seeing a
Outback
nice video,
Steakhouse has proudly supported our troops.
and this is
now we
kind of
invite
the
you to
same
join
one that
us.
they're running on TV.
Come
right
into
now.
Outback this March
So,
and order off our limited time
their
red, white, and
whole goal
bloomin'
is to
menu
send
with our signature entree starting
as
at
many people to here
$9.95.
also.
And you'll help us donate $1 million to Operation
So that you may
Homefront,
see it on
an
TV, you
organization
see it
that
here, they're
provides
basically
support
trying
to
to
our troops
saturate the
and their
market.
families.
So please join us this March and help us say thanks for giving.
Outback, welcome home.
So on here, we have the convenient become a fan, because the whole goal of a Facebook page is to get as many fans as you can. So you want to engage the user as many times as you can to become a fan. So they have a little fan box you can put in different parts of your application. And so we put that there. And then you can go ahead and click here to say thank you to the troops. Now, if you have a friend that you'd like to say thank you to, then you come in here and you can go ahead and send them a message. And notice as we just went here, it popped open this wall post page. Now, here I can type in something. I'm not going to do it. This is my live account, and I don't want to make up stuff by pushing it. But if I publish this will show up on my wall. So that's one way you can viral, right? This is like a Facebook JavaScript. They have a whole API for you to go ahead and pop these modules. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that right now. And then I'll go ahead and send one so you can see how this app actually flows. I'm going to send it to one of my other developers. I am on stage now. Good luck. Okay, so I'll go ahead and send that to him. And what we did is we customized the invite. So this will send an invite to his invite requests and tell him to come, back to this app and view the card that I just created for him. Okay, so it's a private message for him. When the user lands back, they see the same commercial, then they see their card that was just written for them. Okay. Now, when they go here, I can send another message, or I can sign up for special discounts. And this is where we ended up repurposing the app that we had before. And if any of you had used the app, this looks familiar, except for it's a different skin now, and we added a few things to it. But notice how here it filled in my name, my birth date, all that. We're actually getting that from the Facebook API. So that pre-fills it in. So the user just has to put in their email, and their zip code. And the reason we ask for zip code is we want to know what store they're in. Now, you see how quick that was to bring up stores? What we're doing is we're actually caching all of the zip codes that they're in a database and all the stores, and we're caching it all in memory across all our instances. Okay? So why that's nice is, you can see how fast that is. The user doesn't have to wait for that lookup. So we're not even persisting this in the database. This is all in memory. Okay? So you want to pay attention to those particular details when you're building apps like this, because no one likes to wait. They don't want to wait for that lookup. And then here you end up here, and it says thanks for joining, and then now they can send you coupons and things like that. There is no promotion going on right now, so don't get me wrong. But when you sign up for these things, sometimes they send coupons by email and stuff like that. So anyway, that app right there is running in Azure as we speak. In fact, this is here. How many people have an Azure account that they play with? Okay. Do you have any how many have live apps? Okay. Cool. A few. For those of you that haven't seen this, these boxes here, these are services, and then these disk drives are your data for like table storage and message queues. So if we look here, this is the first time I ever showed this live. So. I'm not going to swap right now, though, because we don't want to do that. So this is the live instances right there. So right now we have three web instances running and one worker role running. And this is where we put staging. So when we upload staging, I'm going to get into deployment later and how this works and how we can ease your life in deployment with some of the scripts that we put on Codeplex. But I'll get to that here in a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch gears here. Okay, so that's a live app in Facebook. And this is a typical Azure deployment for really any app. I mean, this doesn't have really anything to do with Facebook if you look at this from an architectural point of view. But the way we did Outback is with the Bloom and Onion, we had five web instances and 3 worker roles. And one of the worker roles was processing contact data, kind of denormalizing it into the database so it's easier to report on. And also sending out emails through a third party, through a web service, so that they got their coupon. Okay? And then we had a bad email worker role that was listening from the web service. Oh, hey, was that email bad? Yeah, this one bounced. And then we'd send them a Facebook notification saying, hey, we didn't get your email. Your email failed. So it was a way to kind of to confront what was going to end up being quite a nightmare when you only have, there's 5% of people that don't get their email, whether it's, their mailbox is full or, there's 100 different reasons why this happens. But we didn't want if it's going to be 5%, we certainly didn't want 25,000 people posting to the wall that they didn't get their coupon, because then everybody would think it was a scam. So we looked ahead to the future and said, okay, well, if we notify them in Facebook, we know we can do that because we have their Facebook ID. And they'll get the notification, hey, can you give us a different email? This one's not working. And then they would fill it in, and if that one didn't work, it would just repeat. Now, we did put a limit, I think, of 5 or something like that, because we didn't want to create this machine that just kept on saying, hey, you failed, because that wouldn't be very effective. But it did help at least 10,000 people that, that didn't get them at first. So that was really useful. And we used table storage to make it really fast for us to know if you've already filled out the form. Message queues, where the worker roles were listing those, and then SQL Azure we were using to persist all the data so that we could report on them, because you can't report on table storage. Don't even try. It's not very effective. Once you get over 1,000 rows, it's not very performant, and it's not really meant to be reported on. It's meant to get kind of flattened data or metadata. Okay, so we started working with Microsoft, and they had asked us, they said, well, we like what you did. Is there any way we can get this kind of in a toolkit on CodePlex? Not necessarily for Facebook development, but for deploying Facebook apps to Azure and making it easier to do. So we created a Facebook Cloud Toolkit, and it's actually called Facebook Azure Toolkit. I forgot to change that. So these are all of the open source kits that we're actually using in this open source kit. Okay, so this is a framework with a bunch of frameworks in it. Okay, so we're using the Facebook Developer Toolkit. How many people use that for the Facebook app development? Okay, so it's basically a .NET wrapper around the REST services that Facebook provides. Okay, Facebook, their normal one's PHP, right? But the Facebook Developer Toolkit 3.0 is now supported by Microsoft. So, and it's about 99% API equivalent of all the REST services. Now Facebook adds new columns all the time. So if you do want to tap into new columns, sometimes you may have to add something to the schema, but it's not very difficult to do, and patches are definitely appreciated for that project. Then we have Azure Toolkit. I just called it that. This is a lot of what we did. And it's a simplified library for accessing message queues, table storage, and SQL Azure that I'm going to show you. We haven't ripped that out and put it as another project yet, but we do plan to, because what we learned was by making it easier to talk in Azure doesn't really have anything to do with Facebook. I mean, Facebook is a web site at the end of the day. It's an iframe that sits inside of Facebook. Now, you can do FBML too, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But at the end of the day, it's really just an iframed mini website that's 760 wide. Right? We're using Ninject for our dependency injection. The reason we use dependency injection is once you start developing for cloud, and for Azure in particular, and you start using table storage, you can't run that application in your local data center. You can run it on your local PC, but once you deploy it to like a preview server or whatever that's your own, you can't run your app anymore. Okay, especially if you're talking table storage, it'll just fail under IIS. So what we did is we used Ninject to kind of inject the cloud, right? So we'd create interfaces that would talk to SQL Server, but then when we publish it to the cloud, we would just use Ninject to inject the cloud at that point, right? And so it's nice because it gives you that flexibility of running in or out of the cloud depending on what you're doing. If you're testing in a local server, for other people to test the application, you can't have them go to your local laptop, right? And plus, it's on port 81 for the cloud development, and you can't call external to the cloud development toolkit. That may change in the future. I don't know. I'm sure Microsoft will probably come up with some solution for that for testing cloud. And we're also using ASP.NET and MVC2. We're huge MVC fans. We used MVC1 for most of the time, but since MVC2 was just released, we just threw those binaries in there. It can be used either one. We're also using AutoMapper. Anybody use AutoMapper at all? Okay. So AutoMapper basically maps domain objects to table storage objects or domain objects or view models. It's a great way to kind of map your data from domain to view model and back and forth. So we use that. Now, one of the things we're thinking about in the future is to create like a web forms version of this. It's really just another web app that we just would add to the framework. And you could use web forms or MVC. It really doesn't matter which one. And if you do the Facebook Developer Toolkit, you'll see samples of web forms, Silverlight, MVC, Silverlight out of browser. There's a lot of cool examples in there. And then lastly, and I think most important, we created some automatic continuous integration deployment scripts for TFS 2010. So, and I'm pretty sure they would work on 2008 too. I haven't tried it, but it's basically one-click deployment to the cloud from your source control server. Okay, so any of you that have been playing with Azure know that that's one of the big pain points, is deploying. It's not bad deploying in Azure. It's just that you have to get latest on your own local machine and publish from your own local machine, which is always scary because you don't know if you have latest or not, and you're always kind of, especially if you have 3 or 4 developers on a team, you don't really know, did they check in, or did I get latest, or, what happened? Because it's happened a few times where, I deployed an app, and, I forgot, I put in that CSS change. So I have to redeploy the whole thing again, and it's not like it takes minutes. It takes 15, 20 minutes. And if you have a lot of instances, it can take a half hour, 45 minutes, especially if you're doing caching. So with that, let me go ahead and explain this real quick, and then I'll show you a demo of how the toolkit works. So currently we have a C# version available today on CodePlex. It's at Facebook Azure Toolkit .codeplex.com. And there's a slide at the end that'll show this again. And then next we're going to work on a PHP version. We're hoping to get that by the end of the month, and we're looking at writing it in Clips and using Cake PHP. And Cake PHP is like ASP.NET MVC. It's the same kind of framework. It's MVC type pattern. Just because we're so used to that pattern that we kind of hate to move into just writing code in a page like ASP and PHP. I don't know if we'd be able to handle that. It might drive us a little crazy. But I'm going to be talking to the PHP guy in Azure next session. He's got some interesting ideas for that too. So with that, let me show you guys the toolkit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this real quick. It's going to go ahead and set up the cloud locally. Okay, and while the cloud's starting, for those of you that are kind of new to Facebook development or you're interested in it, when you set up an app, you get an API key and a secret key and your own unique ID, okay? You can go ahead and name it, put up, icons, icons, add multiple developers, your contact email, bookmark, tons of things here. You can make it installable for a user or for a Facebook fan page. So you can create apps that run inside of pages too. Okay? So it doesn't have to be just an app like you saw with Outback. In fact, Outback's is kind of a dual. It runs in fan page and out, depending on what it's doing. Then you have profiles. So in a profile, like the tabs you see, like the one you saw on Outback. So you basically put an address right to where that tab is. So when you install that application to the fan page, that's the page that'll show up in the tab. Okay. Then the most important thing that you're going to need to know when you're doing this is your Canvas callback URL. Okay. So when you run your cloud locally, you know how it says like 127.0.0.1:81? That doesn't work in Facebook. So you have to say localhost:81. Okay. anything with an IP address, or I don't know what their rule is or whatever, but it doesn't work. So you have to do it this way. Your render method can be iframe or FBML. We choose iframe, but if you wanted to do everything completely in FBML and you want to go ahead and take a stab at it, you can go ahead and do that. And then, there's a few other things too. I mean, I could get really in-depth on just this and have a talk about just Facebook development, but there's a lot to cover, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But you definitely want resizable so that your iframe can resize. And then your canvas width is 760. That's where your iframe lives. And then I always turn these quick transitions off. That's a good tip, because when you have them on, sometimes things get messed up in JavaScript in different browsers, so particularly IE6. I don't know if Facebook actually supports IE6 anymore. And then we have, for your Connect, Facebook Connect settings, you have localhost there and your base domain. So the reason you have to have all that in here is when you're setting up your project with the toolkit, you need to put all that information here in the app settings. Okay, so you have your API key secret, your callback, your suffix. So when you launch this app, which I just did, and it went over here, which one did it go to? Here, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so it invoked the debugger, and I'm actually running in the cloud locally. Okay, so this is the Facebook API. For now, it shows my user ID. Okay, so don't write that down. And then I go ahead and get the information about this user. Now, for those of you that haven't programmed Facebook, this is really eye-opening. I always like to show this. So I'm in the debugger, and I have a logged-in user. Okay. Now, this is all the information about the user that's currently logged into your app. Now, they would have had to hit allow access before you get this information that gives the disclaimer. And if you've been on Facebook, you've seen this allow access, if you've ever added an app. But so let's see, I got their birthday. I guess I don't like any books. His first name, my hometown. Let's see what that is. West Des Moines, Iowa. High school info. Oh, I went to Valley High School, graduated in 91. God, I didn't know that one was in there. What else we got here? Married. Here's my full name. Here's all the pictures of me, my profile pic. So I have a big one, a small one, and if I actually grab that URL and go there, then it should be a picture of me. We'll go ahead and look at that in a minute. And then we have a picture there. Political, if I put anything in there, what my URL is for Facebook, my proxy email. Married, I'm male. I have 72 wall posts. So you get the idea. Now, I think there's even something in here that, and then there's a way to say, okay, we'll get all his friends, and then it shows all their friends' names, right? So, okay, we'll go through here real quick so you can see. I'm going to go ahead and put this into a view model. And then I'll explain this here in a second. This is basically grabbing all of the comments that were given for this app. I basically created a real simple app that you can comment on the app. And the reason I did that is I wanted to show how you talk to table storage and SQL Azure. Okay. So now, see, it says my name, hello, Jim Zimmerman from Facebook and Azure, and this is the code that's live on CodePlex that you can download and play with, okay? In fact, I actually added some things, so after this session, I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes to CodePlex, and then I'll create a new release that you can download. So you see there's total comments is 47, and then I'm showing the last 10. So it's not a very realistic app for this part, but I wanted to show talking to table storage and SQL Azure. The total comments, that number 47, is actually coming from metadata from table storage, okay? And I'll show you why that's useful in a second. And then I'm showing the last 10 comments that someone put in there. So I'm going to say, okay, I like this app at MIX. Create that. Now, my comment model is already populated with the text and my Facebook ID. So now we can track which Facebook IDs are making what comments, okay? Now we also could grab your image and then persist that too, and then so when everybody comes back, it says, oh, Jim posted this comment and show his picture. And, you know, so we can get pretty creative, you know, as we go along here. So since I'm using MVC, I have some validation stuff on here that just has required first name or required Facebook ID, required comment text. If the model state's not valid, it sticks it back to the user and says, hey, you didn't fill this out. And then here I'm using AutoMapper to go ahead and map that model to my comment domain object. Okay, and then I add that as a service, and then we'll watch what this does in a second. So now, notice how the page loaded, right? It said thank you for a comment, but now I'm in the debugger. That's because what just happened was when I added that message, I added it to a queue, message queue. Now we're in something called a comment processor, okay? And this is a thread that's listening on the comment queue, okay? So that message just got passed from the message queue to this process message method, okay, with the data that's in the queue. Now I'm going to go ahead and save that to SQL Azure. And then I'm going to save it to table storage. And I put this example in there so you can pick. You don't have to use SQL if you don't want to. For something like this, you may not even want to, because when I show you how I increment the total here, so I'm going to go ahead and step into this, and then I'm going to go, and remember, this is all running in the background, so the user's already done. So this is one of the big reasons why you want to use worker roles to kind of massage your data or do whatever you want with it. Because what I'm doing now is I'm going to the database, I'm finding out how many comments there are now. There's 48 comments in the database now. I'm going to grab the old total, right, which is 47, and I'm going to increment it, and then I'm going to update table storage, and then I'm going to commit it. Okay, so now if I go back, go ahead and step through this fast so we don't have to go through that again. Okay, so now there's 48 comments, and then there's my last comment, right, coming from database. Now, that total comments is actually coming from table storage. So if we look here, you see that? Yeah. Okay. So this is where the framework comes in. This is where it's really useful. So see this table repository of T? Okay? So we're doing a table repository of total comments, which that object is the one that just has a total on it. That's all. Its whole goal in life is how many comments are in there. And it's persisted in one record in table storage. So now we say, okay, you know, give me a new table repository of T, find all to list, first or default, which is, you know, just using a link, and give me the total, put it into my model, and then that's what's showing up there. Okay, so now you can see that this can scale a ton more than if you had to do a select, join, you know, count every time that page loaded, right? There's really no reason to do that every single time. So you're basically kind of creating your own indexing system in a way, right? You're kind of, you know, you're creating this metadata that's important to the view of the page, and you're getting away from just everything has to be in the database, everything has to be a query. Because if you do that, your app will not scale. At some point, it'll quit scaling. You'll have to add more SQL servers. You'll have to do something like that. So if you're smart about where you put your metadata, an account is a very good example of why you would do this. There's no reason you need to count 1 million records every time someone hits refresh. Because a lot of times they'll come and they're not going to leave a comment. And so, you know, you didn't have to do anything. You just, oh, there's 1 million messages in there. And then you show the top 10, right? Okay, so let me show you a little bit of the guts on the table repository and the queuing. So let me close this stuff down so you can see it a little bit better here. Okay, so when you create a process, well, let me start with the beginning because it'll make more sense to you. This is what our worker roles look like now. Okay, so have any of you created worker roles in Azure? Okay. This is 10 times easier than if you go look at any tutorials online on how to create worker roles. You end up with like 30 lines of code to do this. Okay, and actually probably more. Because what we started to realize is, like, if you remember that first architecture that we saw with Outback, we had a bad email worker role, we had a contact worker role, and we had a notification worker role. Well, what we've done is we thought that was kind of a waste to have 3 worker roles handling 3 queues, because we didn't really need that much processing power. So what we did is we created this idea of start processor. Okay, so we go ahead and start processor of T, okay, and the comment processor is basically thrown into its own thread, okay? So each processor implements message processor of T, in this case, comment. And in the message processor of T, it takes this queue name and goes ahead and creates your queue for you too, okay? So if we go to definition on that guy, you know, here it takes care of creating a new message queue for you. It implements what we call the stay alive. So while it's alive, go ahead, and this thread just lives forever, basically, until it's told to quit. And while it's staying alive, it gets a message, and then it sleeps for, a second, and then it processes the message. Okay, and then we have exception handling built in, right? So when you're using Azure, you want to make sure you turn on the diagnostics. Okay, this is what a lot of people forget to do, or they're just not aware of it, and so they try to implement their own debugging structure. And this is not the way to go in the cloud. You should use what they provide, which is they use tracing. So what we've added is this trace error. That obviously comes from the library, but then we added this extension method onto the exception that'll basically grab all that data and stick it into the log the way we want it to be, okay? So back to the comment processor here. So all you got to do is inherit that, put that in your base, and then really the only thing you need to do is do this process message. If you're not talking to a database, you're just doing some work. All you need to do is override that process message to do whatever you want to do. So our create data context, this is actually talking to SQL Azure, and it returns that data context so that when we save to SQL Azure, we're basically grabbing that comment off the queue, deserializing it, which is already done for us, and then we create a new link to SQL repository. Now this could be anything. You could use Entity Framework, Subsonic, whatever kind of ORM mapper you're using. Or if you want to write SQL, you can do that too. And then go ahead and insert that domain object, and we have these map to SQL data extension methods, so that we make sure that we map the domain object properly. Right? It's kind of a one-to-one map, and this is where we started to use AutoMapper, so we don't even have to write that anymore. We don't have to write any of our mapping code, which makes it really easy to kind of stick with the domain model. Then the same way we do save to SQL, save to table storage. So we're using kind of a command query pattern here on this guy. And so I go ahead and create the command, and then I execute it, which is basically just does an insert, right, and commit. So they look very similar in pattern to leak to SQL or table storage, and we did that on purpose so that it just felt like it was the same, right? Now with table storage, what's interesting with table storage is this is how you create your table. It's just a class, right? So you inherit the table service entity, and you set up how you want your partitioning to be. In this case, we're just doing a new GUID for our row key. And then we have a Facebook ID and a comment text. Now, the way our framework's set up is you just create these entities and then create a new table repository of T of this entity, and it'll just create the table for you. It'll persist it. It does everything for you. So it's almost better than an ORM mapper, I think. Okay, so back to the worker role. Now you understand start processor, and then we do a base run. So if we were going to process a comment, process a user, process all this, we would just create start processor user, start processor email, start processor, whatever that we're doing. And then we just create a thread for each message queue for each domain object. Okay, and it makes it very simple, very easy to read, and very easy to debug. Now each worker role we inherit an Azure role entry point. Okay. Now, what this does, this is really useful. You know the data I was talking about that you want to persist for your errors and your diagnostics? We set that up for you. So all you have to do is implement Azure role entry point. And you can change this if you want, but this is kind of what we've learned to be the best practice. Like every 5 minutes we transfer whatever logs have been taking place and we persist it to table storage. You could do it every minute if you want. It's up to you. And then we also have a log filter, so we only show errors. If you turn this to verbose, you'll be sorry because you have so many messages that you won't even know which ones are errors, and it kind of gets to be painful, especially with 404 errors in particular, because everybody's always trying to hack your site for some reason. I don't understand, and then performance counters. We actually do the same thing with performance counters where we're tracking. Let's see if I have those in here. Yeah, we basically transfer how much memory's left, requests per second, and what was the third one? Memory, requests per second, and CPU usage, right? So those are the three things that you're definitely going to want to do. So this does on start, which starts the diagnostics, which I just showed you, and then it sets the configuration setting publisher so that if you can ignore like how this code works because you don't really need to know this, but what happens is if you change that config file in Azure, it'll restart the instance and apply the changes to the instances. Then you can actually do this on the fly too. So you want to increase your instances, decrease, you want to remove logging because you're getting so much traffic. You're like, I don't care about the logs. It's slowing it down. These type of things. You can do whatever you want. And then here's the start processor of T. It's also implemented in that role entry point. Now you can use that role entry point in your web role too. Okay. So there's web role. So there's the Azure role entry point there too. Okay. So if you follow this pattern and you use that Azure role entry point in your worker role, in your web role, now you have it in one place. You don't have to remember to do it because you will forget. You'll do a new project, and it's just because we did so many projects, we started to see the pattern. We're like, okay, we got to copy this code over. We got to copy this over. And then when you copy code, guess what happens? Now you're doing a message queue of contact when you didn't really mean to do that, and now you're talking to the wrong queue. And so copy and paste is bad, right? And then here, this is where you can see where we're monitoring, since this is a web app, we're monitoring the requests per second here, the ASP.NET. And you can go find these performance counters online. There's plenty of them. There's like hundreds of them. I had no idea. Now let me show you why this is useful too, because when people see this, I was shocked. This tool was just released last week. It's in beta. It's a private beta, but it's by Sarah Brada Software. So I'm going to go ahead and open this performance counter. Now, how many times with your current web apps now that aren't running in Azure, how many times can you go back in time and see what the CPU usage and memory usage last week? Right? You can't. Well, maybe you can. You can architect this on your own too. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, well, I just want a live feed for now. If I wanted to, I could say, show me the last 8 hours, last 24 hours, and it'll graph pretty like what the CPU was, what the request per second was. But let's look at Outback right now and let's see what it's doing. So I say, do a live feed every 5 minutes. Okay. And let me get the deployment ID. since I'm running staging and production off the same data, it'll look weird if I don't put this deployment ID in here. Okay, that just means I'm in between logging here. Okay, so there's some interesting data, right? I can see that at least within the last 10 minutes, my maximum requests per second were 3.2. The average available memory left is 1.1 gigs, right? And the maximum CPU that I've had in the last 10 minutes is 5%. Okay, so the app's obviously not going too crazy right now, right? Now, these guys, I just talked to these guys on Friday, and I asked them, I was like, well, can we set up triggers for us so that if it hits like 100 megs of RAM left, I need a notification, and I want you to restart that instance, right? Now we can auto scale, right? So that's kind of where that's like the perfect situation where if they can give us the tools to do it, we can say, okay, if this occurs and this occurs, then create a new instance. Or how about let's take away an instance and save some money tonight because we only get so much traffic between midnight and 8. So let's just run 2 instances instead of 4. Okay? And you can start to see patterns that develop. And, this is only, 5 minutes of data, so the graph's, nothing big there. But if you do this over 24 hours, which would take us some time to do, because there's a lot of data points, you would see, curves and when your traffic was and your requests per second and everything. So, for $50, this tool is just amazing. I probably shouldn't say they could probably charge more. They might watch this and be like, oh, we should charge more. So anyway, I wanted to show you that because I think that's really useful, and I just found that 3 or 4 days ago. Before you had to go download that data out of table storage and open it up in Excel and read it. And it's not pretty. So, okay, let me go back to here, and I bet this is just a slide of another demo. Okay, so what we did is we're creating an app called Cloud Pull right now. And this app is going to go live very soon. We're hoping by the end of the week. And it's going to be an app that runs in Facebook on Azure where you can add polls for free to your fan pages, to your groups, to your wall, and take polls. And I'll show you a little bit how it works right now. And then the eventual goal is to have a Silverlight client that then allows you to view a report of your poll. So you don't have to log into Facebook and go through 8 clicks to see the results, right? Because we counted how many clicks it takes to get to a fan page and to an app, and it's about 8 clicks. So we're trying to leverage, the right technology at the right time, and Silverlight out of browser kind of works good for this kind of situation because we can just talk to the data in the cloud and display it and not have to have you go through Facebook to find it. So let me go ahead and show you this real quick, make sure that I have it running. Okay, so what we've created is you're going to have, there's going to be public polls, and go to these real quick. So there'll be public polls, recent polls, your polls, okay? So we're trying to create a community of polling, right? So you can see what other people are doing, how many other polls are like yours, what your friends are voting on, things like that. And then you have your own polls. Now, here, if we go ahead and let's go ahead and create one so you can see how this works here. Okay, so pepperoni. And then we've used a lot of jQuery to go ahead and make these kind of automated add. And then let's say you want anchovies to go up a level. So you can move them up, right? And then you can go ahead and add an image. I won't add an image right now. And then you can say, well, I want it to be added to this particular page, right? So let's say it could be Outback, Under Armour, Twitter. It could be the guy who gives out free Chinese food in the mall. Right? Have you guys seen that fan page? I saw it yesterday. I thought I'd throw that in there because I thought that was pretty funny. Obviously, you can only add to pages that you own, that you're an admin of. In fact, Shane, I think you became a fan of that guy, didn't you? Yeah, I thought one of my designers is in the room here. And then I can say, well, I want everybody to do it. Or if I was to add this to my wall, then I could say, well, I just want my friends to see this poll. So go ahead and create that there. And then, we already have some data in here so that I could display it. But for here, you'd go in here and you'd be able to see your results. Okay, so these are the results that we're also going to put in the Silverlight client, right? Because you can see how many clicks that is to get to here. And as a page admin, you're probably just going to want to open up the client and see real quick, what the results are so far, or close a poll. Okay, and I don't have too much time left, so I want to switch gears and get to the deployment demo, because I think this is really important for best practice here. Okay, so where are we at? Azure poll. Stop. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead here, and we're going to connect to my live TFS server right now. Okay. I'm going to show you a live demo of this working here. So I have a... You're not logged into Live Messenger. Well, I don't want to be logged into Live Messenger. Okay, so let me show you real quick if we can edit this. Well, let me fire this off real quick because it takes a few minutes, and I want you to actually see it work. I'm going to go ahead and queue a new build. Okay, now this is actually going to deploy the app that we've been playing with. It's going to deploy it right now to Hello Azure Cloud. Okay? And I'm going to do that by clicking that button, and I'm done. Okay? Now, it's going to take a little bit because what it's actually doing in the background, so you already have it up there in staging. Okay? So this is Hello Azure here. What's happening kind of in the background here is we have a TFS server that now is getting the latest code, compiling it on the server, CS packing it through a command line, packaging it up, then using PowerShell scripts to upload the package to blob storage, then communicate to Azure and say, I want you to stop what's in staging, I want you to delete what's in staging, then I want you to deploy what I just put into blob storage, right? Now, if you do this yourself, what you have to do is you have to click suspend, and then you wait a minute or two. Then you click delete, then you wait a couple more minutes. Then you hit deploy, you browse, grab it from your local published file, you upload it, you wait, then you click run, and you wait. So we automated that whole process with PowerShell. And we got the scripts were borrowed from a lot of places, the Azure commandlets that I think Jim Nakashimi, or I can't remember, Ryan Dunn, those guys, I don't know who actually wrote the commandlets, but I actually just put a blog post up last night on how this whole deployment process works on my blog at jimzimmerman.com. So you can go ahead and read that to kind of understand how it works, and there's links to the stuff too. So let's go ahead and make sure that, okay, so it's still building on the server. So while that's going, I'm going to show you actually how the build works. So I made it a manual trigger. The last thing we want to do is every time someone checks in, we build to the cloud. That's kind of wasteful, right? We have our build defaults. And here, what you have to do is when you set it up, you have to use the old way of deploying in TFS, which is from 2008. 2010 uses workflow and all these things, and I couldn't figure out how to invoke PowerShell scripts with all that. So I'm sure it'll get figured out, but basically I just put the path here, and then I just tell it, hey, call the proj file in this right there. Oh, forgot. I got a touch screen, so I just moved it. So here, look, we're going back to here. Look, see, it's updating the deployment now. Right? So this is all still going on behind the scenes as we're talking. Right? Okay, so that's that build here. Okay, so while that's built, okay, see how it says stopped now? So that means it's actually uploaded the new build. Okay? Notice how here, see the time? 3/16/2010, 5:20. Well, that's what time it is now. So what we did is we labeled the build what time it was when that got deployed. So you'll know, okay, it was at this time. We're working on trying to put a version number into it too, so that you can, figure out which build it was. But the time's, good enough for now. And so, see, now it's initializing. So the PowerShell script said, hey, start now. So now it's initializing the roles. Okay. Let me see here. I have the PowerShell script that I'll show you real quick. Right. Well, here's the deploy script. So use CSPack to create a package and then go ahead and deploy it. And these are the two commands it calls on the server, CSPack and PowerShell script call. And again, this is a little bit more detailed in the blog. It kind of explains what it is. And then and here in the PowerShell scripts, we're basically grabbing a few arguments. I just had my subscription ID in there. That wasn't good. Yeah, oops, all right. We edit out that part in the video. And then here, we're getting hosted service, right? We have to have our certificate that passes. So even if you got my subscription ID, you still can't use it unless you have my cert. So that's the security mechanism. And then we go ahead and remove the deployment, create a new deployment, and this does all the new deployment stuff. And then set it to running. My favorite part of PowerShell is this command right here, get operation status, wait to complete. So this is all async going on. So if I had to write all that code that had to keep polling it to see if, okay, because it has to be linear. This has to happen before this one can. So that's really helpful. Okay, so don't have too much more time, so I'm going to switch back to the slides real quick. So I just got a few more I want to run with you real quick. So deployment, my favorite part is that magic blue button in the middle. When you click it, it writes the load balancer and moves staging to production and production back to staging. So it rewrites the load balancer, happens in about 20 seconds, no downtime. All of a sudden, all your virtuals that were over here are now over here, and production is over here. So you can go ahead and do your last final test to make sure that production is what you thought it was going to be. And if it didn't work out, then you hit the blue button and it swaps them back. If it did work out, delete this, delete your staging. We usually keep it up for an hour just to kind of be safe. But you do want to suspend and delete your staging because you do get charged for those roles. I found that out last month. And so you will get charged. So instead of just being charged for 4 instances in production, I'll get charged for 8. Okay? So they now put that fancy yellow alert on there too because they have to notify us if that's going to happen, right? So again, that's my favorite part of deployment there. And, please fill out your evaluations. I got a minute left if anybody has any questions. Here's some resources for you. There's a Facebook Azure Toolkit.codeplex.com. Again, Thuzy.com if you need any Facebook app development. And the blog post is on jimzimmerman.com. Thanks a lot, guys.